Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to MAG1. In this video I will be continuing the coverage of the MAG1 League, where in yesterday's first video I covered the best of ones that we played on day 1. Now when those were done, Flower Fairy made it straight through to the finals, and that only left the 2 best of 3s to determine the second finalist of Group 1. So to remind you guys, Sacco lost against Flower Fairy and then Measim lost to me, which means that this first best of 3 will be between Sacco and Measim, and then the winner of that will play a best of 3 against me, which will determine our second finalist. So without further ado, let's get into that first best of 3. Alright, so in this game, we're going to have Sacco versus Measim. Let's see what Sacco wants to play. I think when he was talking on the live broadcast, I think that what he mentioned was he wasn't happy about how that standard game went, and he might just try and play more aggro, especially against Measim. Measim here, though, opting to go for the aerial specialist with spiders and crawlers. And Sacco deciding to go for the Steel Ball pack. Now that should be a good matchup for him. Steel Ball, at least theoretically, should be decent into Spider. I think the matchup is not honestly like that favored in a headbutt scenario. Because of the HE tech on Spiders, they tend to chaff clear faster most of the time than the Steel Ball player does. And so it's not very clear cut, but at least in the first couple rounds, Sacco should be fine in this matchup. Measim here opting to go for even more crawlers on round 1. Going for a setup that's kind of similar to the one that I played against him. Already has the 3 crawler waves and plays 1 all the way in the left corner there. This will be able to get a debuff in case Sacco plays asymmetrical. And it looks like it will be a headbutt right now for both players. And those steel balls are perfectly lined up to get rid of those spiders. Arclight's also in prime position to get rid of the crawlers because they are faster than those tarantulas. And so round 1 here, I think, should just go over to Sacco. Yeah, Arclight will turn just in time and not get stuck on the tarantula there. That's very important on the right side. Left side, same thing. And yeah, the spiders just instantly get taken out. If those steel balls manage to lock on, they will win very easily. And so even though those crawlers are making a beeline for Sacco's tower, there is no rest of the team left alive to be able to, well, make use of that debuff. Gonna speed things up here because I think we'll have a bit of a wild goose chase as the crawlers will be going for the other tower, the steel balls will be going for the other tower. Finally, the Arclights will be making their way over. But still, the second debuff will come through, and then at last Sacco here will take the first round. Round 2, we get unit reinforcements, Mustang, Marksman, Fang, and Sledgehammer being offered. Sledgehammer looks pretty good here for Measim. Can use that in the middle of the 2 tarantulas to distract those steel balls. And for Sacco, I don't really know what you'd want to go for. You can pick Mustang, but it's not necessarily the best into tarantula. I guess Marksman is fine as well, but again, Marksman in aggro is, unless you have Assault Marksman, is not really the best. Sacco does decide to go for it. It is 3 deployments after all. Positions them very far up, even though he does not run that Assault Marksman. And yeah, Measim going exactly for the play I mentioned, goes for those sledgehammers in the middle. That'll prevent the insta-lock onto the tarantulas, and actually buys one of the new units. Going for Phantom Ray there on turn 2, making use of his aerial specialist. And Sacco is a missile spec, so does get access to those double missile strikes this turn. Let's see what he decides to do with it. Against Spider, there's not much to be done. Spider can't die to missile even if you stack them. So it looks like he'll just stagger them, only using the one there for a corner play with an arc light in the corner, and then killing the crawlers that would normally kill that arc light during the time it spawns in. Quite a nice play. Sledgehammer is here doing a fantastic job though. Also quite difficult for the marksman to kill. Nice thing about the marksman pickup though is that it does mean Sacco will not fall prey to the area units that came out this turn. And because it's a headbutt, Sacco just saying, I don't need to do anything about my left tower just now. Even though it is getting attacked by those crawlers, the fight will already be over by the time that they arrive. So, yeah, the debuff does not matter. And that is exactly what is going to be happening. That being said, the marksmen right now are being left to their own devices as the Arclight is just not interested in saving his fellow units. Eventually, though, he will turn, and so Sacco takes up round 2 here as well. Bunch of levels available on the Arclights and one of the Steel Balls. Amp Core available, Laser Sight available as well. And yeah, Measim here picking up the Amp Core. And same thing from Sacco. Both of them putting them on the level 2 units that they have. Sledgehammers here with the item and Steel Balls with the item. Sacco picking up that level. Add some crawlers to the flank, which will prevent these Phantom Rays from being able to deal with them. And we get a third Phantom Ray pack as well here in the headbutt. Sacco going for a little bit of a value missile strike there. Won't be able to kill the Phantom Rays or the Tarantulas, but will dispatch of the crawlers and deal at least good damage to these, which will mean that the marksman will be able to finish them off in one shot, where usually they would only, or they would require 2 shots to kill the Phantom Rays. And we also do see a level here on the tower to prevent a debuff from happening too quickly. Steel Ball does manage to get a lock on, so one of the spiders falls early on in the match. And Marksman quite easily getting rid of the Phantom Rays, and I'm looking at the text now, but Measim doesn't run stealth, which from all the players that have been trying this unit out, is the best tech. So a little bit surprising that he's not running that. Instead, running burst, range, shield, and the oil bomb. Very surprising. Stealth is definitely, I think, one of the techs that you should be running. And a lot of players are, in fact, opting not to take range because it has a bit of a weird interaction with stealth where, well, if you have more range, then you spend more time being not stealth, which kind of tends to work against you. Crawlers again will be able to get both towers, but round 3 will again be going over to Sacco. Round 4, additional deployment slot picked up here for Measim. Subsidized marksman, not terrible, but I mean Sacco already has 3 marksmen, so it's maybe not exactly what he wants. Rhino Assault, also worth considering. Shield airdrop is fine, but when you're in this type of a headbutt, it will probably just instantly pop. And Sacco going for the additional deployments as well. Manages to get the levels here on the marksman, which is quite important because it means that they can now one-shot the opponent's phantoms. And Measim adding even more to defend the flank. I mean, this is getting quite expensive right now. The Arclight is still going to be clearing 1 crawler pack, so it trades 1 for 1. But then there's two 200 cost units that spend quite a good amount of time to be able to just get rid of two 100 cost units. I do not think that is worth it at all there for Measim. And a definite value play for Sacco. Goes for the Wasps now. Wasps notoriously is one of the counters to Phantom. It does get a little bit tricky because Wasps have very, very strong counters themselves. So something like Fortress AA can ruin your day. Something like Mustangs with range and anti-air can also be very strong. But for now, it'll do the job very well. Create a good distraction, allow the marksman to do their thing. Spiders are getting a little bit tanky though. One of those leveled ones took a bit longer to take out. But still. Enough wasps remain alive. Again, the crawlers here not able to do anything meaningful before the fight is over. And so it should again be a round going over to Sacco. Let's see if the Arclight turns around. It actually doesn't. So it's now going to be Marksman trying to clear a pack of crawlers. They might be able to do so. They do still one-shot them even during debuff. And so yeah, they are able to clear the pack of crawlers. Round number 5, we get more free units. Melting Point, Fire Badger, Phoenix, and Stormcaller available. Measim opting to go for Fire Badger here. A little bit surprising to me because he already has spiders. So I feel like his chaff gear is probably just good enough. Sacco goes for it as well. I can understand that a little bit more. Only has triple Arclight. I guess there is a good pairing though between Phantom Ray and Fire Badger. Both of them are pretty low range. So you can play the Fire Badgers in such a way that they stay in front of the Phantom Rays. And now Measim going for burst mode on his Phantom Rays. A little bit surprising as well, because I don't know what you're burst moding. I guess it's okay against the steel balls here, but that's about it. Don't really need that against things like Arclights, Crawlers, Marksmen. More of a tech that you would see being used against the much tankier units, right? Things like Rhino or Giants. Very proactive play in this case. Sacco going for another Wasp pack and also deciding to go for aerial specialization. So we'll have a big range advantage there against the Phantom Rays. And adding Wasps to the flank as well. So 4 Wasp packs by now. And, well, they will kind of walk past one another as both players try to go for each other's towers. But I think Sacco will be a little bit more successful as this tower is still level 1 there for Measim. And so, yeah, 9 seconds of debuff will be happening. The right side is still a very convincing win for Sacco. And that looks like an incredibly powerful round. The Wasps even managing to spawn in for 2 seconds and then still win the flank. Eventually, left tower will fall, but yeah, once again, too little, too late for the side of Measim. And that is a lot of damage by the end of round 5. We enter round 6 with portable shield available as probably the best item here to pick, if anything. Both players do end up picking that. Finds its way onto these Fire Badgers on the line from Measim. And it finds its way onto the level 2 Steel Balls there for Sacco. Both of them having fantastic items. Both of them doing a great job so far. And Measim has enough of this Wasp shenanigans, so he just decides to go Wasps himself. But he will definitely need range on them as well if he wants to be able to win this, because right now, well, there's a level advantage and a deployment advantage for Sacco as he buys even more Wasps. And we now have 6 pack of Wasps on the side of Sacco. with anti-air, and by the looks of it, Measim is not going to go for range, so yeah, there's just a very big advantage here, I think, for Sacco in the mirror still. And I'm a bit surprised by this, in all honesty. It's a bit of a weird game so far. I really don't understand the Phantom Ray. I feel like Measim was kind of just trying out stuff on the go. But Fortress AA just seems strong to me. Mustang maybe would have been a little bit harder to pull off, but Fortress AA looks fine. Fortress is a great unit in the mirror or in a headbutt as well. Of course, then you'll still have to deal with stuff like Melter possibly, or a Fortress from Sacco, because you could be behind a tech, right, if you have to click AA, but I don't think this Wasp play is necessarily that bad, but you would probably have to tech at least one more, or get range or something to be able to justify this play. Now, that being said, there's not that many Wasps left alive from Sacco, but they are going to get Tower, and this is a bit of an awkward split so that the Marksman can take out a good chunk of Wasps. And yeah, never mind these Wasps from Sacco, it'll just be the level 3 Marksman securing the win there on round 6. Very convincing headbutt scenario from Sacco, showing that he can still play aggro and has done so for a very long time. Yeah, again, a little bit of a weird game there from Measim. I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to do. I think if you want to play Phantom Ray, in this scenario, honestly, it's probably still pretty good in a headbutt, but I think Burst was just not good at all, and he should probably try and run something like Stealth, which would annoy the Marksman that much more. The Fire Badger pickup was also suboptimal because he was into Tarantula. Then he did sell out of them, but when you're already behind, it's very difficult to try and like swap out one of your units that is already kind of doing their job for a unit that might be slightly better, but doesn't really solve the problem that you're having, right? Like Chaff Clear wasn't necessarily that much of an issue. And even though Fire Badger is maybe better of a pairing with Phantom, it doesn't give him enough of a tempo swing to start winning the game. So I think he should have focused on something else. Could have, again, gone for like Fortress AA, I think would be the most obvious thing. It can be a little bit dodgy, though, against the high-level steel balls, but you have to take some risks here and there. Could also go for Wasps, but then I would like to see him click range as well, and maybe do it a little bit earlier. Either way, this is best of 3, so there's still possibly 2 more games to go. Let's head into game number 2 between Sacco and Measim. All right. Now, having a look at these packs, Measim right away goes for Typhoon Spec, Arclight, and Steel Ball. Pretty strong pack, good amount of hit points as well. It's a comp that just works in and of itself. Typhoon Steel Ball is relatively powerful and gives a good transition into something like Typhoon Boat, which tends to show up quite a bit in free units, especially in the mid-game rounds. And Sacco here going to be playing the side of the Tarantula player. So we get a bit of a vice versa type of situation here, where Measim will now be playing Steel Balls and Sacco will be playing the Spiders. And the funny thing here is that you'll see Measim just copying the setup from Sacco from his first game. Sacco, however, I think here will not be going for a headbutt, and instead will be playing a symmetrical defense. Putting the Tarantula slightly on the inside by the looks of it. Oh, never mind. Pretty much in front of the tower. They're 3 wide, so you can't exactly put them square in front of it, but as good as possible. Goes for double crawler. And yeah, let's see how this shapes up. Still has to position the Marksman, though. Double crawler purchase, obviously, here for Measim. And Marksmen are just going to be distributed evenly between the 2 towers. This should be favored for Measim for the first round, because he is, again, moving into Sacco with the full force of his starting units, and this Tarantula will not be able to meaningfully threaten the tower. It is a relatively slow unit. And then on top of things, Measim also does have triple Arclight, which is a very powerful early game chaff clear unit. So about what you'd expect here on round 1. And it looks like steel balls will probably level. Oh, yeah, one of them will. There's actually one steel ball from the other pack still in there. That one is not near leveling at all, but could be a bit scary. Early level steel balls are definitely something that can create a lot of problems. Photon coating available here could be a nice item to create even more tankiness. Measim does go for it, but Wasp Swarm is available, and that can be a nightmare to defend, as you guys saw from my game against Flower Fairy. Just like the Wasp pack with Jump Drive, Wasp Swarm is also one of those things that cannot be missiled most of the time because of the way that the pack spawns in. And it also wins against Mustangs, and it wins against level 1 Fangs, as long as both are untech'd. So it's not very fun to defend. You usually need a chaff pack plus something else, and then you have to guess where it's going to be going. So in this scenario, we see Measim is going to go for a missile and just pray that it's going to be enough. And then we have crawlers here behind the tower. Looks like Measim is going to guess correctly, at least with where that Wasp Swarm is going to go. We get another Spider purchase for Sacco, as well as a Fang. Deciding to level up his crawlers so that they might be able to take out that tower a bit quicker. Measim going for an Arclight on the flank, but yeah, I mean, look at that. Half of the pack survived. So yeah, that's just going to be a -50, as we say, as that missile didn't do anything. And then the other part is that Measim doesn't have any anti-air. And, I mean, at High Mamar, we all kind of know that this is a risk, right? That you usually won't be able to missile the Wasp pack with one missile. So, you know, even if you don't get debuffed there, Measim would need some sort of anti-air to be able to get rid of the final Wasps. But he didn't buy any anti-air apart from that one missile he had. And so round 2 here is going to be going over to Sacco. I will say it's probably a bad round either way there for Measim. There's not many things you can do other than guess correctly for the most part. Like, you could put like one Fang in the back with a missile and then hope that he goes to the left tower, but if you have to do the same thing on the right, now you're looking at a lot of deployments and a lot of missiles just to be able to deal with a 100 cost spell. But, you know, maybe that was the play. He would have still been able to at least level his steel balls, and then 300 for that could still... no. Yeah, no, it would have been awkward. I mean, he could have played around it, but what my point is that it's an awkward round either way. And so round 3 here, we get 3 units. We get Typhoon from Measim. We get the Farseer for Sacco from the Specialist, and then we get the level 2 Scorpion picked up by Sacco, as he knows that 1, Steel Balls are in play, and 2, Typhoons will be coming out in force. And Measim decides to go for the Melter. It is one of his favorite units. I think it is his favorite unit. So we will see it being used this game again. Whether or not he opts to keep it, we'll have to see. It is a pretty good unit against Scorpion, so might be reading into the 3 units that Sacco might want to play. Farseer gets put on the side here to deal with that Arclight. And another Tarantula gets put in the middle. Level 2 tower here as well for Measim. Scorpion so far not doing too much, although it's now turned its attention to some of the steel balls. Typhoons, though, doing pretty well. Steel balls will eventually die, but the melter is locked onto the Scorpion, and so Typhoon's doing a great job. That being said, Measim manages... Measim gets debuffed by those level 2 crawlers and the Tarantula from Sacco, which will buy enough time to be able to get rid of that melter, as Measim now goes below 4,000 hit points, down to 3,500. Round 4, we get Lightning Storm, we get Subsidized Arclight, Efficient Light Manufacturing, and Mustang Production Line. Mustang Production Line could be a decent item for something like the melter. Subsidized Arclight is a good card, but I think Sacco here already kind of is invested in Tarantulas, so no point picking it. Goes for the Efficient Light Manufacturing instead, which will be fantastic if he wants to keep playing this type of Scorpion, Tarantula, Marksman comp. All of those units will be getting cheaper. It is an expensive card though, and so you'll see that Sacco here doesn't have that much money left. Only enough to buy a Scorpion, one more Crawler, and then he has 200 resources left to do whatever he wants. And that is going to be High Explosive on the Tarantulas to try and chaff clear a little bit better. Measim, on the other hand, did pick up the Subsidized Arclights and is, by the looks of it, going to be keeping his melters on the board. Goes for range on those and picks up 2 more Arclights and a melter. And is now starting to build onto or towards his right tower to defend. And I mean, you can see the value here of these leveled crawlers. The Arclights are just not able to get rid of them, which means that the melter is kind of stuck. It will now finally lock onto the Tarantula though, and it is pretty tanky, so these level 1 marksmen are not having a good time trying to kill it. Melter on the left will be able to live just about long enough to kill that level 2 Scorpion, but Sacco is going to pick up yet another round, as Measim is still trying to make a bit of a transition happen. Picks up the Efficient Giant Manufacturing that's offered on turn 5. Sacco is going to be skipping. And so we get another melter, we get another Arclight, we get range on the Arclights as well there from Measim. Marksmen are being leveled for Sacco. Tarantula picks up a level as well. And Measim is starting to realize, you know what? I don't want to play aggro. I changed my mind. This steel ball thing is not working. Let's move back. Let's move back and play a more standard game. And so he beacons back his Arclight, his Typhoon, his Melter. Range is picked up now as well on the Tarantulas. And more Tarantulas have been picked up. As well as a Fang here to protect that Tarantula in the middle. It won't do too much though. Melter does find its mark. But there's not enough chaff here for Measim, as he's been using a lot of deployments to get Melters and Arclights. Which means that the marksmen easily find their target, get rid of the arcs, and when the arcs are gone, now the Melters are struggling to shoot at things like the Tarantulas and the Scorpions, the things that you want to be shooting at with that unit. And so yeah, another round here is going to be going over to Sacco. Rhino, Sandworm, Wraith, and Overlord available. Measim going for the Sandworm. We'll have to see if he wants to keep playing that or if he's just going to sell it. But if he wanted to sell it, I guess he should have picked the Overlord. Yeah, it's going to keep the Sandworm and transitions the Photon item from the Typhoon onto that Sandworm. Sacco here opting to go for the Wasp Swarm. Defensively, doesn't want to use it defensively anymore. Even more Arclights being purchased and another melting point. So that's another, I think it's the third turn in a row where we get Melter, double Arclight purchase. I mean, look at the amount of Arclights on this board. I think there's 9 of them now? 9 Arclights. I mean, we can look at the other side. There's almost the same amount of spiders on Sacco's board, but Sacco already has triple techs on the spiders now, adding Spider Mine this turn, and that could be very annoying for Measim to deal with. Spider Mines are notoriously quite tanky, so Arclights don't one-shot them, and they provide good distraction as well, so that the Melters, again, don't find their targets. Measim going for a second tech on the Melters with the EMP barrage. Managing to hit there at least one Tarantula, but this got nerfed a while back, and so it only disables techs now for 8 seconds. You can see about half of the army, maybe like 25% of the army is EMP'd. Worm is a menace to deal with. That might be a bit of a problem there for Sacco's units to kill that unit. They are a bit stuck inside of the oil as well. At the same time, we have a couple of spider mines now looking to turn their attention to that leveled tower, and I think if all of them explode onto that, it should work. Yes, it will, just about. So tower goes down, 7-second debuff going the way of Sacco, but at the same time this worm is working to get a 9-second debuff for Measim, and that is a very good timing, as it will mean that the melting point can now start working away at these tarantulas. That scorpion gets stuck on the spawned mines, even dies to the mines. How much can the sandworm do? I don't think it'll be able to kill all of these remaining units, but we'll have to see. Maybe it can. Oh, mine spawn at a pretty good timing, and so Sacco will be coming out ahead in this engagement. Pretty close though, and a long fight on round 6. Orbital bombardment available, instant pickup for Measim. Electromagnetic impact, a good spell as well. Intensive training is fine, but I think here you probably want to go for one of the spells and try and just finish the game off if you're Sacco. Sacco going to skip instead. Not interested at all. I find it a bit of an odd decision. I don't know if he did very quick math and he wanted to purchase something specific, but I think the EMP, the electromagnetic impact there, is always a pickup if you don't want anything else. It's such a good spell. Short cooldown, lots of value to be had, even if it's just, you know, forcing your opponent to shield and then getting rid of those shields. And we do see that the Sacco last turn, by the way, took the boat and sold, and is now just going to go for even more spiders. And we see a bit of a trend here, right? Like my first game against Measim, I beat him with spiders, and perhaps Sacco noticed like, hey, this guy maybe doesn't quite know how to deal with spiders, or he is just so addicted to playing melters that the spider matchup is pretty good. And so we see even more spiders being purchased here, which is a very common thing to do, by the way, when you're playing spiders. At this point, when you have triple techs, usually on any units, to be fair, it will justify buying even more of them. Now, the one thing that we didn't get when we saw this is that Sacco went for acid on his own crawlers. The problem here is that his army is moving into his opponent, and also the worm does have photon coating. So, yeah. This turn doesn't quite go as intended, perhaps. And suddenly Sacco is down to 674 hit points. His opponent did pick up more Vulcans last turn, but yeah, the acid there definitely did not help him, and I think a lot of his units died much, much quicker because they were standing in pools of acid. Sacco here picking up the Elite Wasp from the cards, and deciding to go for triple Wasp with range, trying to finish things off that way. And these should gain quite a good amount of value. as on Measim's side, it's just going to be those melters for now. They'll be able to get rid of the wasps. We see even more Vulcans, even more melters being added right now from Measim. Sacco also does have the second tower attack enhancement, by the way. And let's see how this shapes up. This time around, it looks like the acid doesn't end up in as bad of a position. I mean, some of these tarantulas are still going to be stuck inside it, but looks much better with the wasps. The tower will fall on the right side, however. And with that, one of the melters there even managing to lock onto one of the spiders before going onto the wasps. And this is a very close fought affair right now. Spiders here are going to have to do everything to get rid of these giants, and they will be able to do so. So 350, okay, needs to get rid of at least one more giant there, or otherwise Sacco will be going down. Currently 850 damage left on the board from Measim. Gets the tower debuff. Is that going to be enough? There are still some mines there moving in. There is still a melter left, though, to dispatch of these wasps. And, okay, the worm got dealt with, and the melter is also going to die. Measim, low on hit points himself, but not quite going to die, so somehow we find ourselves going to round 9. And Measim opting to go for the extended range Vulcan card. Underground threat available, Vulcan's Descent available as well. Sacco going to go for the underground threat in this case. Going to try and use it in the back, hoping that maybe some of these units will just be moving too far forward and not be able to turn before the towers get debuffed. And Measim with 250 credits left, so he took the third tech on his melting points, going for crawler production, and opting to go for underground or subterranean blitz on his crawlers, which I'm not necessarily understanding, because I think that the tarantulas don't really care with the HE. But that means that he did not take anything against the wasps. And Sacco this turn added 3 more packs of elite wasps. The only thing that's been added, I think, is just another melter here. And maybe some Vulcan levels. So this is very, very greedy there from Measim. And I mean, look at the amount of wasps right now. Right side is going to be falling yet again, but I just don't think Measim has enough anti-air to be able to get rid of these wasps. And yeah, I mean, that's simply going to be game. There is too many wasps left alive. Sacco just doubling down on the wasps yet again, very much like game 1. And that is going to cost Measim the game, which will mean Sacco will be advancing 2-0, and will be facing me in the next best of 3 to determine who will be joining Flower Fairy in the finals a couple weeks from now. So yeah, pretty interesting game. Measim there going for some aggro and then deciding that he wants to play a more standard game. Pretty decent transition, and almost makes it work as well. Close to one-shotting Sacco the turn that he went for Acid Crawler. I think Acid Crawler definitely was not the right move and almost lost him the game. The Elite Wasps, though, the card came at a very opportune moment, and Sacco took it and managed to win the game with it. A bit surprised, though, that Measim didn't respect this more. Goes for, like, I mean, crawler production obviously is going to be good if you have this many melters, but like, you need to respect the wasps. You saw triple elite wasp the turn before, which lost you the round. So you probably should get some form of anti-air there. Yeah, like a Fortress AA, or yeah, maybe something of the likes, right, would have made sense. Could have even gone for his own wasps, like triple blue wasp with range and AA probably would have been able to beat these. And there is no good anti-air on the side of Sacco either, so I think that would have maybe been a better play. Doesn't end up being the case though, and so yeah, let's move on to the final best of 3 from the MAG1 League Day 1 with me against Sacco. Alright, so here we are, Sacco versus a Rooster in the first game of this best of 3. Let's have a quick look at my packs. Now, there's a couple things here that are actually really good for me. There's the Stormcaller packs, of course, but I don't really want to be playing Standard, so I'm just going to go with Elite Spec, which for some players is probably going to be a bit of a surprise because not everyone thinks that Elite Spec is even playable sometimes, but it is actually a bit of a comfort pick for me. I like to pick this a lot because I like the different playstyle. And I've played it so much now that I feel relatively comfortable. This is a nice pack. I get 2 level 2 Arclights, which in the current state of the game is honestly a real powerhouse of a unit. And yeah, I'm just going to try and make it work here. Now I have a good matchup in front of me. Sacco started with Tarantula and Crawler. And so you'll see me overloading one side of the board here, because I'm not like too confident again in that symmetrical play. I tried it once before versus Flower Fairy, but I had to juggle a bit too much. So I'm just going to go back to the asymmetrical aggro here. Sacco is a Rhino spec, so we'll have to watch out for that round 4 Rhino. And Sacco here decides to buy 2 more Fangs to hopefully kind of halt my advance, at least enough for this Tarantula to do a little bit of work. Expected outcome, of course, will be that I win this round 1 because, well, this Tarantula won't really be involved in the main fight, and killing 8 steel balls is going to be a little bit too much to ask from a level 1 spider. And so I go pretty wide here. Again, the reason is because I kind of want to pull in the enemy units from one side. And yeah, I mean, that's working pretty well. My Arclight eventually does get stuck on this Tarantula, and it seems like some of the crawlers have gunned for my tower. I have one absolute Chad of a steel ball there that happens to go for the spider while the others go for the debuff, so that works out very well for me indeed. And I still have one Arclight alive. The other one unfortunately died. Sacco's crawlers do end up getting the tower debuff, but this Arclight should shortly turn, and it will, which means that round 1 will be going over to me. And so we enter round number 2. And now Sacco knows where I am positioned, so this is where the real battle starts. Intensive training is available here, but I don't necessarily always like picking this as much on Elite, because you already have access to those level 2 units. And especially on Elite, I kind of like to economize as much as I can, even if it doesn't necessarily allow me to make a good play here, because you can look at my credits. I'll have 450, which is not going to be enough to buy 3 150 costs. It's not going to be enough to unlock a new 300 cost and still be able to deploy a second unit, so it's simply going to be awkward. So I will have some money left here, but that will carry through to the next round, and then maybe I'll be able to make use of that later on. Because my units aren't getting any cheaper, so, you know, having a bit of a weaker round now and setting up for maybe a stronger round 3 or 4, especially when the free units come, I think is a solid game plan for me. Now I go for double Fang because I was expecting this Wasp play to come out. Sacco did see me struggle versus Flower Fairy. And, well, lucky for me, he puts them right in front of my units, so the blue Fangs there will be able to deal with that just fine. That's one of the benefits, I guess, of being Elite. I do have those stronger Fangs, where level 1 Fangs might take a little bit longer. These ones will certainly beat a level 1 Wasp pack. And so it looks like round 2 here will be successful once again. Sacco, by the way, added another spider to the board as well. And I decided to level up my tower there. So that's what I decided to do with the extra credits I had. Make sure that there is no cheese coming through. Because, of course, Sacco could have also positioned his wasps to attack the right tower. In which case, it is a pretty smart decision to make sure it's going to take a while to take that down. Only some blue fangs left and an arc light. They will easily be able to clean up those crawlers. I see there's one little guy making its way over to my other tower. So I'll have to wait a little bit longer, but round 2 goes in our favor as well. Not the biggest of wins though. Only a couple hundred damage there. Round 3. Still no free units, so we'll get those on round 4. Haste module picked up by Sacco. Probably just a nice pickup for me here. Haste mod is almost always an insta-pick if you don't want anything else. Unless you like really need those extra 50 credits to do something specific. And yeah, you'll see me pick it up. I go for another Fang Pack in the front to protect my units from a potential missile. I get the level on the steel balls. And Sacco goes Jump Drive on the Wasps. Doesn't opt to go for my level tower though. Just positions them in the back for now. Gets another Tarantula in the middle, so already up to 4 by this point. And here, honestly, I think going for something like a Phoenix would be quite good for me. Can also try and go Mustang, which is what I end up doing. So I go for the early Mustang here to have something solid against the Wasps. I think, in hindsight though, I could have maybe managed with just the blue fangs, but it is a little bit risky perhaps. And obviously Haze module is one of the better items for Mustang. This also does give me the transition from Steel Ball Mustang, which I currently have, to Mustang Fortress, which is a very, very classic and powerful comp on Elite. And should perform well into Tarantulas. So that was kind of the long game plan. Trying to make the Mustangs work, make use of that item. At the same time be able to farm up some of the Fangs, be able to farm up this Wasp pack perhaps, and then transition out of Steel Ball into something like Fortress. Level 2 Spider here though, relatively tanky, and I think it might just be able to clean up my entire board. And it looks like that will be the case, and that is very painful, because I mean, look at that. Suddenly, we went from a board of only level 1 Tarantulas to a board with, oh no, 2 level 2s, 1 level 3 potentially. My opponent also does have access to that Rhino now. If he is going to use it, it's definitely going to go onto the right tower. We get 3 units, Fire Badgers, Scorpions. I decided to go for the Phoenixes here, as it is, again, a really nice unit into things like Spider, into things like the Rhino. And you will see me build here onto the right side, trying to protect against a potential aggressive play from my opponent. I add a Mustang pack, I add an Arclight and a Fang, properly respecting the plays that may be coming out. And yeah, exactly what I expected is going to be happening there. Rhino aimed at my tower, Wasps behind, but I should be able to deal with this relatively easily thanks to those Phoenixes. And yeah, opponent does end up leveling all of those Tarantulas and give them range on top of things. So now it's getting a little bit scary. I decided to sell out of my steel balls because I didn't manage to get a level there. I am a bit hesitant here whether that was the right move or not. I think maybe I could have gotten away with something like range on the steel balls and try and play it out, but it is not very clear-cut in this matchup, especially when the Tarantulas start leveling like this, because, well, that is the downside of Elite. You do give away a lot of experience when your units die. I think Sacco also sold one of his Fire Badgers and opts to put one pack down there in my flank. Wasps are going to go past my tower. But luckily the fangs are going to be there to catch them, so no debuff will be happening. Sadly, I am losing this main fight. The tarantulas are just looking absolutely unstoppable. And it even seems like they didn't take any damage whatsoever. And so now the question will be, are these fangs going to be enough? There's 5 fangs. Never mind. 6 fangs left alive. And they might just prevent me from being able to get a default win here. Yeah, sadly it looks like those 6 surviving fangs are going to ruin my day. And tarantulas are just picking up even more experience. This level 1 now also going to level 2. The level 2 here, close to level 3. And I do manage to take out 2 more fangs. But it is going to be a win for Sacco. I do manage to get rid of all the tarantulas though, so it's not all bad. And as we enter round number 5, electromagnetic impact shows up. I do decide to pick that up. Efficient light manufacturing here could have been a consideration for me. I think it probably would have been correct for me to pick that up. Because, well, on Elite, usually it's very hard to get to Giants. And so having cheaper small units is definitely going to make things easier down the line. But again, right, I am selling out of my steel balls, and so I was planning to go for a fortress turn. This turn you'll see me go for range on my Mustangs, and I also decide to go for double blue Mustang. Add to the board, kind of finish the whole setup, make sure that I have Mustangs everywhere. Do also pick up a level here on my Phoenix. And my opponent doubles down on the flank, so adds a photon coating that he just picked up to those fire badgers and puts the wasps behind. This won't be easy for me to deal with just the Mustangs, and I do believe I should realize that. We'll see what I decide to do with it. Okay, so I pick up a wasp of my own to help DPS down these fire badgers. They are exceptionally tanky, but they don't quite have that range. So I might be able to stay out of harm's way. Looks like I will be able to. Fire Badger's not firing a single time. And the Mustangs will clean up those wasps that were on the flank. I decide to electromagnetic impact 2 tarantulas, which is successful as well. Sacco picked up HE, and yeah, this is kind of where you see the problem in what I went for. It's also why I was a little bit skeptical, right, about picking up those Mustangs early on, because Mustang into Tarantula, especially when you're elite, and it's hard for you to both get the Mustangs and the front line, is going to mean that for quite a few rounds, the Tarantulas are simply going to be shooting at high-level Mustangs and getting a lot of levels. And so that's what you see happening here, right? All of a sudden, those level 1 Tarantulas turn into level 2, level 3. We're now looking at round 5. There's a potential level 4 Tarantula on the way. And even the blue Phoenixes kind of have a hard time keeping up with the damage required to take those out. And so round 5 here, I do manage to get a win once again. But it's only minimal, as 2 Phoenixes are the only thing left alive on my board. And so now we enter round 6. And I need to make some choices. Now here, I get Fortress offered, which is kind of what I was gunning for in the first place. But if I go Fortress, I feel like Melter is a bit of a concern for me, right? So Overlord is a consideration as well. I end up picking the fort anyway, because I was kind of gambling, okay, maybe my opponent just tries to go for Overlord there, or tries to make use of the units that are being offered, and won't immediately go to Melter. And in that case, I can maybe make the fortresses work, because they are already at level 2. Sadly, we can see what's happening right now is that Sacco takes the Scorpion, sells it, and immediately goes for those Melters, expecting Fortress, because again, it is a very textbook comp coming from me, right? Building the Mustangs and then going Fortress. And I don't really have the correct text on the bar to be able to face these Melters. I think if I had Elite instead of launcher overload, this would maybe be playable. But yeah, I'm really not going to have a good time when I find out what Sacco went for. He went for the read, and yeah, guesses correctly. I think a different play I could have done, which is a little bit weird, but I think could have worked, is picking those overlords that were available. And that's why I did think a little bit and didn't insta-pick the fortress. I was considering going overlord because of the potential of this play. Now, overlord Mustang Phoenix is a weird comp that probably shouldn't work, but overlords are very powerful and they are good against things like Tarantula and Melting Point. So I feel like with the carry overlords, maybe I could have made them work. What you're gonna see now is that the melters insta-lock my fortress there, and I lose a lot of tempo because of the choice I made with the free units and the read by my opponent. And I feel like I'm already so behind here that there's no point in trying to make fortress work. My opponent already has melting points with range, and I would have to work on fortress with barrier. I would need to get range, and even then I'm not sure it's that good of a matchup because my opponent can just, you know, match the amount of fortresses with a melter. Like, I'm expecting 2 more melters to come out this turn. Also, barrier is being offered here. Fantastic item for something like a melter. So yeah, Sacco will be picking that up. Does mean that he cannot pick up orbital though, which I do decide to go for. Very strong spell indeed. And yeah, you see 2 more melters coming out. I feel like here it's going to be very difficult for me to do anything meaningful with these fortresses. And so what you're gonna see me do is try and regain some tempo by double teching my phoenixes, giving them range and charge shot, as I think they are probably my best unit currently to be able to deal with the tarantulas and the melting points. They should have a decent matchup against them, and with the charge shot especially, they should be able to make up for the fact that the tarantulas got a lot of levels and the melters are now level 2 and getting relatively tanky as well. So yeah, you see me sell out of the fortress, abandon that idea, kind of cut my losses and try and shift things into a different gear. I still don't think this is a great matchup. This is probably like worse still than something like Overlord Mustang would be, but I think it's better than me trying to make Fortress work when my opponent already has like the ideal counter on the board, almost, right? I mean, you can see how tanky the tarantulas are though. It's being shot there, I think 4 or 5 times by charge shot phoenixes. And those late blue crawlers are kind of causing some trouble for my Mustangs, and so I'm not managing to lock on. My hope here is that I'm able to chaff clear at least fast enough to be able to have the Phoenixes lock on. And because of charge shot, they should be able to kill these units relatively fast. Problem is, Mustangs aren't known to be the fastest of chaff clear units, especially against things like crawlers. They're not ideal. But I was running HE at the time, so that is a consideration, something I could go for. Try and make the HE work, and just turn my Mustangs into pure chaff clear machines to clear the way for the Phoenixes. Now here, my opponent does not come to play, and immediately goes for Fortress Anti-Air into the Phoenixes after seeing those double techs. So suddenly this is a big board full of giants. The tarantulas are so big you could probably consider them giants. 90k hit points on that level 5. It has, the level 4 has the same amount of hit points as the melting point there. So this is not going to be easy whatsoever. I sell the other fortress. I get high explosive on the Mustangs, again because I was seeing that I wasn't able to chaff clear as well. I get loose formation on my crawlers to try and see if that will do anything against the tarantulas. I'm not sure that it is that good because it did get nerfed, so maybe that was a waste. But, you know, you try some different things. You try and make plays that, you know, will save you from dying. I do use electromagnetic impact there on the right side with the acid I picked up and a missile, because the impact deals 35,000 damage to shields, and then the missile will deal the additional 5k for a total of 40k, which will get rid of the shield and allow me to land the acid before the... or break the shield before the acid lands. So that's a really good play. It does manage to get me a good round here by the looks of it. I mean, all of those giants get instantly deleted. The phoenixes, though, are still struggling. And those fortress AAs are just absolutely brutal. Even against the level 2, level 3s. I mean, look at this level 4 phoenix also almost dying there. 4th AA is such a strong ability against phoenix. I do manage to get a round in. A little bit of extra damage. 2.6k now is what my opponent is sitting at. And round 9 we get the 3rd rotation of free units. Now here there's not really anything for me to go for. Sandworm doesn't make sense against things like Melter and Fortress. Marksman is not going to do anything. Sabertooth would just be to sell, but I really don't know what I would be teching here. So instead I decide to go for the Phantom Rays. They are level 3, so they do have a pretty decent amount of hit points. And I decide to use those as a kind of bait for the Fortress AA. Hopefully the Fortress AA will be locking onto the Phantom Rays, and that means that most of my Phoenixes should remain alive. So you'll see me space them basically a little bit in front of the Phoenixes, and then in between the Phoenixes. That way, you know, the explosions will be happening here, and the Phoenixes should remain safe. Opponent uses a mobile beacon, though, to, it looks like, save both the Tarantula, the Melter, and this Fortress. Somehow seems to also be inside of that mobile beacon. And oil is now being deployed on top of things to try and slow me down and prevent me from getting to that tower. Sacco also leveling the tower there to level 3, so it's a lot tankier, which is not a problem for Charge Shot Phoenix, but it does mean the debuff will only last 5 seconds as opposed to 9. And, well, would you look at this board of giants? I do feel like I'm a little bit outclassed here. Phoenixes get a good lock, though. One Fortress is down already. But those level 3 crawlers are still a problem for the Mustangs by the looks of it. Yeah, Underground, making them much, much tankier. We will be getting that debuff, but will it be on time? This Melter, sadly, is already locked on, so it will kill the Phoenix, even during debuff. We are managing to break through on the right side. Sadly, one Tarantula here has found its mark and goes for the Jugular, gets the debuff. That's 9 seconds, sadly, that I'll have to deal with. Phoenix there does one-shot the Fortress at the end. And so I lose another round, but I am still alive, managing to kill enough of these giants. But at this moment, I kind of feel like I've ran out of tricks. My comp doesn't really skill that much anymore. And, yeah. I imagine that what I'll be facing is just 3 more giants every turn. My opponent also has not yet clicked Spider Mine, which I think would also be very good for him. So I'm a little bit at a loss at this point. I don't really know what I'm going to do to get through nearly 3,000 hit points without any giants. And I think it's a bit late for me to try and match anything, right? Like, I could try and buy a Melter, but at the end of the day, like, is it going to be doing that much? I don't think so against a board that already has 6 Melters. I decided to go for Missile Interceptor to try and intercept some of these Fort AA missiles, but that might be a bit of a throw. I don't know. I just decided to buy more Mustangs, hopefully help out again with that chaff clear. They do have triple techs now, so there is a justification for buying more of them. And yeah, my opponent just buys indeed 2 more Melters from the looks of things and goes for Crawler Production. Crawler Production, also a fine choice. Kind of similar to something like Spider Mine. And yeah, I mean, with the amount of melters there, even the tanky Phantom Rays are getting dealt with pretty quickly. And though I do manage to take out a bunch of giants, there's just so many of them on the board. Phoenix will lock on, and I think I might be able to get a debuff there. I do, but again, this Melter is locked on and kills my Phoenix during debuff. That is a little bit unfortunate. Couple crawlers there from the Melters have spawned in. You can see them traveling. And yeah, it still takes such a long time, even for level 5 Mustangs, to get rid of everything efficiently. And so that is going to be all she wrote. And Sako will be taking game 1. I think one of the crucial moments in this game was that second 3 units back, where I decided to go for Fortress and my opponents went for the Melter. I did think about that possibility, but I took a risk because I was like, oh, it's not like Melter was offered, and so it's a definite insta-pick for him. I thought maybe he wanted to try and make use out of the units that were being offered, and then maybe I would have at least a turn where the fortresses would be able to just out-tempo, and then I'd be able to work from that lead, right? But now that my opponent went for Melter, I was instantly on the back foot, and I don't run techs to be able to contest Melter, so yeah, that made it very awkward for me, especially being elite. I already gave away a lot of tempo early on. Going for those Mustangs was another thing that really gave my opponents a lot of levels on the spiders and made it that much more difficult to kill them. So yeah, I think one thing I could have done, again, was go for those Overlords and try and make that work. It's a bit of an odd composition, but I think, you know, sometimes you just have to try and make do with what you get. And I think that would have been an option to try and close out the game a little bit quicker. Overload and range boats, which I do run, can be a bit of a one-man army type of composition. And with the help of the Mustangs, maybe it would have been enough. And then a different thing would be very early on. I didn't necessarily need to go for Mustang. I could have just tried to play something like the Steel Balls and go for like Steel Ball with range, but it is a little bit risky, right? I don't know how it would have played out, but that was something I could have tried to go for as well. Either way, I'm not out for the count. It's a best of 3, so let's head over to game 2. All right, now here we are. Game number 2. Looking at the packs, there's only one pack that has chaff, and it is again elite spec. And you might say, what are you doing, Rooster? You already got stomped by giants just now with elite. Stop it, right? You're not streaming. But you know, this is a good pack. Like, this is actually a good pack, I think. I get the elite with the sledgehammers and the crawlers, and again, it was the only pack that did have chaff for a starter, so it's not all bad. I get a decent slab of hit points, and the nice thing here is I probably get one of the better matchups that I could have faced. Sako takes Typhoon Specialist with sledges and Arclights, and the thing about level 1 sledges and Arclights is that they get one-shot by level 2 marksman, which is exactly what I have access to. And so here, I am not going to be playing aggro. I am simply going to be playing standard and try and prove an advantage with the elite marksman that I have, because we are in a bit of a mirror. Now, of course, my opponent does have slightly better chaff gear than me because he has those arc lights, but I have the DPS advantage. Now, my opponent here is still thinking a little bit about what he wants to do. Will end up going for the marksman, realizing that he might need that single target DPS to get past my sledgehammers, and perhaps realizing that 2 chaff packs won't really make the difference. This does mean that my marksmen have good targets only. There isn't a single bad thing they can shoot at, and everything they will shoot at will instantly die. Whereas you can see my opponent requires 2 shots per sledge from his marksman. And yeah, that does make a big difference. And so round 1 will be going over to me. And the nice thing as well is that my marksman can tank 1 shot from his marksman. So round 1 here goes very nicely. And on round 2, we have a choice of Wasp Swarm and Improved Firepower Control System, I would say. Improved Firepower Control System here, though, not that tempting. It's an item that kind of fits better onto something like Typhoon or Mustang, Wasp as well. Not necessarily something you'll quickly see on a Marksman or a Sledge. I mean, if you're playing Carry Sledge, I guess, but I'm not playing Carry Sledge. I don't have those techs available. So you'll see me go for the Wasp Swarm here. It doesn't impact my round either. I did talk about this. Round 2 is a bit of an awkward one for Elite most of the time because you don't have enough to buy 3 small units, and you don't have enough either to buy a new 300 cost plus a 150 cost. And so here you'll see me go for the Wasp Swarm in the back. My opponent goes for it as well. I decide to buy 2 Blue Fangs as a late chaff, but also as a defense against the Wasps. And so yeah, that will be plenty. Nice thing again about this is that Blue Fangs will beat level 1 Wasps. Level 1 Fangs will not. Wasps will win out against those. But yeah, I get a nice round yet again, some good tempo here. And the nice thing too is that it seems my opponent is kind of setting up for a mirror. And so denying him experience, making sure that he doesn't kill all of my units, especially denying him the experience from my leveled units, is going to help me down the line. You saw I was causing problems, right, in that Tarantula game. And so making sure that it doesn't happen again is going to be relatively important here. Another good round. Both of us do go for the same spell, and well, me winning there is definitely good for me. It kind of means that my opponent wasted his spell. Typhoon is available round number 3. We still have to wait for those free units, so again it's going to be coming on round 4. I decided to go for Subsidized Marksman here. Efficient Giant Manufacturing is going to be a little bit too expensive for me to make use of. It'll be at least a couple more rounds before I can get my hands on a giant. And on Elite, it's pretty difficult to spam giants as well. Advanced Shield Device there was an option too, by the way. Opponent goes for double Stormcaller on this turn and also picks up the Subsidized Marksman, so it is going to be a bit of a mirror. And now here I decide to go for 2 more Marksmen on top of another Sledgehammer. Reason for this is that, well, level 2 Sledgehammers are really good against level 1 Sledgehammers, are really good against level 1 Arcs and level 1 Marksmen. And they're good against the Stormcallers too, to be honest. Stormcaller is, well, can be a bit oppressive in the early game against the level 1 units, but once you get level 2 Sledgehammer, those are not as easy to kill. There is a bit of a difference, by the way, between my Marksman and those of Sacco in this game, because I was still running Assault mode for a potential aggro game, so I'm not running Elite Marksman, and you can see that on Sacco's bar, he does have that Elite Marksman available. So there is a bit of a potential range disadvantage for me if we happen to go very long in this game. But then again, the benefit I have is that I have the levels. Level 3 Marksman here does get caught out. Right side for Sacco on round 3. Pushes in, gets the debuff, picks up some experience. And honestly, I don't mind that necessarily going to the things like the Typhoons or the Storms or the Sledgehammers. I want to try and keep the Marksman from leveling as much as possible. Now, that won't be possible from level 1 to level 2, right? That's the lowest threshold. Eventually, they will get there. But the longer I can stall those from leveling, the better it will go for me. So I do pick up a round here, but it's only marginal. And it seems like my opponent is regaining a little bit of tempo. Now, round 4, I said we were going to get those free units. We get Wasp, we get Farseer, we get Melting Point, and we get Tarantula. Both of us here will be picking up the Farseer. Very powerful units and good anti-air as well. And a counter to the Wasps that were available. If Farseer wasn't offered, then I think Wasp would have been the best pick for us. Although Sacco does have those Typhoons available, so might have been Might have been better for me here that Farseer was an option. Position them on the outside to 1, protect the flank, and 2, so that they arrive at about a similar timing as they are quite fast, 60 meters a second. You'll see me go for the early range here on the marksman and pick up another one on the right side and pick up a 4th sledge pack. My opponent also goes for range, and here I decide to go for a cheeky little missile as I see that there's nothing in front of my opponent's towers, hoping to hit an arc light, maybe even the marksman. Let's see. And that is absolute money there. Great value as I get rid of a sledge pack, an arc light, a level 2 marksman, and some crawlers as well. Very happy with that. That'll certainly help us make sure that the right side doesn't crumble. And now we're just going to have to see how this goes. I should be favored again. We kind of have a similar amount of chaff, but I have the levels, so I should be able to kill the important units faster than my opponent can. And that does seem to be the case. And so here we get a pretty nice round, and my opponent goes down to 2,600 hit points. Round number 5, nothing too insane there. Efficient tech research could be nice, but I already did take a tech, and you need at least 3 techs to just break even with that, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make use of it. Even 4 techs, right, is a lot, and I would only make 50 resources from teching 4 times, which to me just felt like not that great of an advantage. Instead I go for the photon coating here and try and just play for that tempo yet again, right? Try and make use of this early game advantage that I've had. I decided to put 2 crawlers in front of my sledges here because, well, our setups are pretty similar, so he could have gone for a missile of his own. Sacco here going for even more marksmen on the outsides. Same thing for me. I decided to go for the attack enhancement on the tower. Going for the temp range as well, and the defense enhancement. Now what I'm thinking about doing here is clicking field maintenance on my sledgehammers, because there's nothing on the board that is one-shotting my sledges. The level 1s can die to the level 2 marksman, but the level 2s require at least multiple shots, especially if we're taking damage from things like storms or typhoons or arc lights. The efficient or the field maintenance could be very useful. I was just a little bit wary there of a potential like scorpion showing up and ruining my day. At the same time, it's a very cheap tech, so you know I'm not going to feel it all that much, even if a hard counter to the sledges show up. But the rounds here are pretty much the same, back to back, and so I get another really nice win. The Farseer staying alive is lovely for me because they do deal 300 damage a pop, and so now we have 1,400 damage, 1,400 hit points, excuse me, remaining for Sacco. Round number 6, Sacco going for the missile strike. I decide to pick up the heavy armor, and so you will see me clicking field maintenance this time around, increasing the hit points on those sledges by 30%, and also giving them 4.5% max HP regen per second. And that should allow them to stay alive, right? A little bit easier. Perhaps take a couple more shots, and that will create more time for the marksman to do their thing. Wasp Swarm is available yet again for both of us, but we do have those Farseers on the outside, so only logical position to put it would be either in the back there for me, or use it passively and try to run it in slowly, which is what looks like I'll be doing. I decided to go for more crawlers because I didn't have anything in the corners just yet, just trying to create a little bit more of those chaff waves. I pick up a level on the Farseer. I make sure that all the sledgehammers are level 2. And yeah, again, I'll be clicking that temp range. My opponent's double shielding there. Relatively expensive. If I manage to break those and still win the round, that's going to be even more tempo coming my way. I try again to be a little bit cheeky with a missile here on the side. hoping to hit something like a marksman and like some storm callers, but there is a shield there. Crawlers managing to avoid that quite nicely. So yeah, the missile will land, but it kills about half a pack of crawlers, so not really worth it in hindsight, but I thought, why not? Let's try it. Now, right side is having a little bit of trouble there because my opponent used the missile strike to get rid of a crawler and a fang pack, which means that we didn't have as much chaff to protect my units. And so yeah, right side will be crumbling. Also, my opponent now seems to have more marksmen than me, has been using more of his deployments to get those. And so things here are starting to turn slightly, right? I have level 3, level 4 marksman, but my opponent is starting to get there as well now. Managed to catch up. And yeah, I mean, look at that. A lot of level 3 marksmen available. And so I need to start closing this game out. Speaking of which, we get 3 units. And out of the 4 things available here, the only thing that makes sense is going to be the sandworm. Both of us instantly pick it up. Sandworm, I made a video about this, very strong into these type of kind of low DPS but long range comps like Stormcaller, Arc, like Marksman. And so what you'll see me do here is go for the Jugular. I decide to go for another Sandworm. I decide to pick up Replicate. I am going to be selling out of my Sledgehammer just to be able to repurpose the Photon Coating on one of the Sandworms and purchase yet another Sandworm. So we now have 3, and I even have enough money left with a loan to be able to go for Mechanical Division. This tech was buffed recently, and so it's very cheap now, only 100, which means that even as a second tech, it is quite easy to purchase. And so yeah, I get temp speed, and that is my round. I don't even have money for a mobile beacon, but I kind of quickly looked at the arrows, and I was like, yeah, I mean, my worms should probably make their way to this tower. And so here we go. Can we finish things? Opponent did add another sandworm on the left there, but I think we should be just fine with these high-level marksmen. Level 1 sandworm is not that scary. And my opponent went for armor enhancement as opposed to my side of the board, which is more focused on spawning larvae. 2 worms still alive. My opponent only managing to get rid of 1, and we do manage to get that debuff now. With all of the burrows and re-burrows, I actually get quite a good amount of larves. And I even managed to win the left side, which means that I close out the game on round number 7. And yeah, I do not fall prey to the potential outscaling there. I get a really nice drop, to be fair. That was probably about the perfect thing I could have gotten. And yeah, I managed to make use of it and just instantly close out the game. I think this does show the potential of something like Elite in Standard. If you get a good matchup, you can just out-tempo your opponents because of the level advantage. Going for the Sledgehammers there, I was almost a bit too hesitant because I was thinking about field maintenance for a long time, but I thought my opponent would kind of counter me harder and maybe buy like a Scorpion or something, but he didn't. So yeah, I could have just clicked that even earlier and maybe been in a better spot. Either way, this means that we are going to go over to game number 3, and the winner of that will join Flower Fairy in as one of the finalists for the MAG1 League. All right, now here we are. In this game, if you look at the packs, I really should have picked Fire Badger Specialist. Now that I look at it again, I do not know why I did not pick this. I would have had such an easier time if especially now seeing that Sacco went for Steel Balls. I don't know why I picked Cost Control Specialist. That is just a straight up mistake on my behalf, because now I am playing an absolute horrific matchup. And so in this game, I'm going to kind of go through the rounds pretty quickly because 1, I don't want this video to be too long, and 2, I don't think this game was very interesting or necessarily competitive from that regard. I'm going to talk through my ideas, but yeah. First of all, I should have taken Fire Badger Spec there. That was a lovely pack. Enough hit points. I get sledges. I get chaff. Like, I think the underlying reason was I didn't see spiders, and I was scared that my opponent was going to go spiders, and then I would have a bad matchup with the sledges. But that matchup is still more playable than this. Cost control into Typhoon Specialist, Ball, Arclight with crawlers is way, way, way worse. And so, yeah, you'll see me position here very greedily. I go for double crawlers because I don't really trust Arclights in this scenario to do their thing. And my idea was kind of going to be, okay, I'm going to struggle to chaff clear on cost control because of the diminished attack. And so I'd rather try and make my way into something like a Vulcan on round 2. So instead I'll get the chaff, and then I get to see where my opponent is, well, put his units. And then I at least get to, you know, gamble correctly and put a Vulcan there next turn. And so, yeah, my opponent plays asymmetrically on the right side of the board. As you will see, I don't have the chaff clear currently to make, you know, to get rid of these crawlers adequately. But even if I bought Arclights here, I would have lost. And so I do manage to get a good debuff there, which allows the Stormcallers to hit some of these steel balls and actually get rid of at least one pack of them by the looks of it. Even a little bit more. Sadly, they do turn their attention to my tower and they lock on even though I get debuff. The crawlers here distract my Stormcallers from shooting at the steel balls, and that means that I do end up losing round 1. It's not a terrible result, but yeah, not really where I want to be necessarily. Now here, I get improved firepower control system, which I instantly pick up. It does mean that the Vulcan play becomes a little bit more expensive and I can't get another deployment in. I actually have to sell out of my Stormcaller on the left to make this possible. And I know that this was doing well, but the main reason why I sell it is because I now want to try and just stop the advance right away over here. Problem though is that my opponent had Underground Threat available, does pick it up, and yeah, puts it in the back there, which means that even more tempo is now going to be going over his way. I think I might have been maybe okay if this didn't happen, but yeah, I'm at a... I really, really need chaff clear, and yeah, having to buy that item plus the Vulcan just means that I cannot react to this as well. And the Vulcan, in fact, it looks like won't even be able to deal with all those steel balls, as my chaff got distracted for the most part, I believe. And so yeah, round 2 here, the steel balls actually do win, and I was really hoping to get a little bit of tempo going my way. I also do lose my missile there. And so now things are looking a little bit dire. Missile strike available there. Sacco does opt to go for it. I would say it's probably the only thing that makes sense for me as well. At least to be able to try and get a crawler. But yeah, this is where the game goes from bad to worse. I should have probably expected this. My opponent gets the Typhoon spec, and obviously the most meta comp that you could play with that would be something like Typhoon Boat. It's amazing, and it's really good against stuff like this early Vulcan that I purchased, because the problem I have is that I didn't start with good chaff clear, I didn't start with good single target DPS against things like the fast steel balls, and then I also didn't start with anti-air. So all of those problems kind of now start to accumulate, and I buy another Vulcan on the right side trying to make sure I win that, but I kind of forget about Sacco being able to buy a boat. Now, this does come out very early. Round 3 boat is exceptionally quick. And yeah, I mean, the right side was winning for me, but I also used my oil. So here, I'm using the tools, right, to regain tempo, but I'm still losing the round, which is really, really awful for me. Now we get free units on round 4, but it's not the things I need. None of these properly counter boat really. I could go Wasp, of course, but then I would fall prey to something like Fortress AA. Like, my opponent has plenty of hit points remaining to be able to counter Wasps. So, yeah, I go for the Farseer here instead. And because I feel like I'm so behind, and I was expecting a lot of pressure from my opponents on the left side, I decide to go for, well, to just abandon the left side and try and play for the right side. Which I don't think is the worst decision, but yeah, I mean, it's rough here either way, because what I need is Scorpions to be able to get rid of the Typhoons, and then I probably need something like Marksman or Mustangs to be able to deal with the boats, which is a unit. I don't have either of those units. I didn't get them offered either, and so at this point, this game is probably over. I think that, like, the things I could have done in this game were, like, round 1 to 3, maybe. And then after that, it was kind of lost. Because this comp needs a very specific answer, and the thing that seems to work the best is something like Double Shot Scorpion with Mustangs, maybe Marksman, and then obviously some type of chaff. And then Arc Lights to help out. But yeah, I just went for the wrong thing here. And in hindsight, I think I probably should have just tried to make Arc Lights work and not go for these Vulcans. I maybe could have read the fact that my opponent would go for my left tower. But yeah, what you're going to see here is that this is just not good enough of a defense against something like Overlord Typhoon. And so we can speed things up here. My opponent, by the way, went for some Phantom Rays. I think he sold one and then used the other in his push. But yeah, Overlords now have Overload already. He's just got to work his way towards range enhancement, and then Mothership won't be far around the corner. And yeah, the only thing that'll be able to deal with that would be something like Mustang. And I'm already down to 2,300 hit points now by round 5. Advanced power system gets offered and is picked up here by Sacco. I decide to skip. Yeah, more boats are being added. We can kind of go through this pretty quickly. I have leveled this to level 4, but it really... I think against this comp, leveling the tower almost never works. Because there's so much chaff oftentimes that will get through that... And you get a very awkward split here on the right side that... You don't really get any benefit out of this. Like, your opponent will just push in here, get the tower pretty quickly because of the high DPS from the boats. And then they'll make their way towards the tower that is not leveled, which they will end up picking up. I do hit a pretty good missile there, but yeah, you can see, like, these late crawlers here are usually what causes a problem. You can see the Vulcans are too far forward, so they don't protect the tower. I also don't have any meaningful threat onto his right tower. And then I don't have enough DPS here from the Farseers to take down any of the boats. And yeah, when all of these boats remain alive, you know that you're in a bad spot. I did decide to go for EMP, by the way, to hopefully try and disable the boats, which maybe would buy a little bit more time. I finally do get the Marksman, but it feels like it's a little bit too late at this stage. Opponent also does get Sandworm, which is very scary for me to deal with as well. Opts to go for Wasps, goes for the Shield, actually gets Mothership as his second deck, which spawning Shielded Wasps is simply going to be the nail in the coffin here. Farseer are not good enough to be able to deal with Mothership, especially not when it's Shielded Wasps. You really, really need Mustangs to be able to deal with that. And yeah, I go for double techs on my Marksman, hoping that I'll be able to get rid of the boats, but it is absolutely pitch perfect play here from Sacco. And you can see how long it takes for me to deal with, well, even like a quarter of the Wasps, really. And so with that, it is going to be all she wrote. I do manage to get Tower, but again, Farseer is not good enough to deal with this type of board in and of itself. And I really should have expected this. I think I was a little bit too late to realize what was going to happen, but with Typhoon spec and a Steel Ball opener, really, you should almost always, at high MMR, expect something like Boat Typhoon to come out. And it also made a lot of sense for him to go onto the left side of the board there. So yeah, I misplayed this. I think I really should have just picked the more solid pack at the start. Like, I never play Cost Control for good reason, because I don't think it's very easy to play. I don't think it's necessarily a good spec. I think it's probably the worst one. And yeah, the matchup there is horrid, in my opinion, because you just don't get anything of what you want, right? Stormcallers don't really help you at all against this type of comp. You don't start with good chaff clear. You don't start with anti-air, so you're just not in a very like nice situation there. With what I did pick, I think I probably shouldn't have gone for Vulcan. I probably should have gone for Arclight anyway, and try and play the one comp that I have had success with against this type of composition, which is going to be Arclight, Double Shot Scorp, Mustangs, and maybe something like Marksman. But yeah, with Vulcan, I also just kind of overloaded the right side. I should not have gone for a second Vulcan on the right. On the turn that my opponent got his Typhoon. Should have realized that there was a threat onto the left tower. Maybe if I put it over there and I added like a Marksman, I could have been fine. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of my thoughts about the game, but this one was definitely not a good one for me. And it does mean that Sacco makes his way through to the MAG1 League finals. Luckily, we did manage to make sure that from the 501s, we at least got one through, and the 201 players also managed to get one through. So congrats to Flower Fairy and Sacco. We'll see them in the finals. Tomorrow, there will be day 2 of the MAG1 League. It'll happen at 3 p.m. UTC over on the MAG1 Live channel. Link is down below. I will actually be casting together with Sacco as Apuchi, Dillo, Red Hair, and B-Man. Will be fighting for 2 finalist spots as well. So I hope to see you there. I'll also make a video about that later on next week. So if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think about the games. You can send your what on earth was that like game 3? Why did you pick Cost Control? Yes, I know. I'm sorry. And yeah, with that being said, have a lovely rest of your day. Take care and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.